They just know they want to help people and they have a powerful story, but they don't know how to frame that story to help people. They just know they want to help and they have a story. They don't know actually how to make that story help somebody. So the beginning of their presentation is usually a disaster because in the first 7 seconds, your audience is making a snap decision if they want to listen to you or not. So in the very first 7 seconds, a speaker's like, "Hi, my name is, thank you for having me. How's the weather?" Like they say all kinds of stupid stuff and no one cares about. Almost every speaker does it. I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Brando, hey, let me tell you the truth. It's not about who you know, but who knows you. Brando, it's your story. You can rewrite it if you so choose. It's your life. You decide those moves. Brando, you want to talk about getting the bag? He built a 7-figure brand from scratch. Brando, it's the Brand Up Podcast, but you already know. Enough talking, bro. Let's start this show. Brando.
Get to the point. Like we're here. You're the authority. You're the leader of the room. We're hanging on your every word, and you're going to come in here and reintroduce yourself because typically you've already been introduced by the person before you, and then you came up and reintroduced yourself. You're wasting your time. Let's hook my attention. So typically they don't have a strong way to hook attention. They don't have proper storytelling techniques. They don't have a 3-step process. I believe everyone should have at least a 3-step process. Could be more, could be less, but a process that you can teach. And then they're confused about their call to action, their next steps they want the audience to take. And so there's a lot of confusion, and they don't have clarity on how to frame that all together.
When it comes to the structure that you help them craft, how much it has to do with adjusting that structure to their style versus, no, you have to do it this way, or since your structure it's already proven to work, you kind of quote unquote force them to adjust their style to the structure. Like, which way is it? Like,
yeah. So I never tell someone you have to do my structure or this isn't going to work. I don't do that because I still have to allow people to be authentically themselves. I show them a framework that is proven to work. Now, if they take it and use it, that's on them. I'm just going to show them the steps. They don't have to follow it. That's on them. I don't change their message. I don't change their story. I don't change their style. I still always allow them to be themselves. I just encourage them to find a way to take your unique style and follow a framework that it would be most beneficial to the audience, because speakers, they typically want it their own way because they're only thinking about themselves, which is what I did for years. This is the best way to do it. And then I learned from other people that were further along than me, it's probably not. I made a lot of mistakes because I was so obsessed with my own story. I didn't think about the story of the audience. And so speakers, a lot of times, they just get in their own way.
No, I totally relate with that. I remember, I only spoke like physically on stage probably 5 times. And I remember it's only the last time, which was last year, instead of thinking, right, you get a little anxiety right before going on stage, not knowing, like, all right. But what I realized was, instead of worrying about, oh, do I look okay? Is like what people are going to think about me. I switched it to, if it's one tip that people can take from this presentation and be able to maybe either implement it today or take it with them home and be really impactful, that would be a win for me. And that completely changed the way that I showed up on stage. And because I wasn't worried about me anymore, I was worried about what can I do for them? Because at the end of the day, that's what matters when you're on stage. Would you agree to that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most definitely, for sure.
All right. So if somebody comes back to you and says, well, it's hard for me to do, or it's hard for me to implement this structure because my story is different, because my service is different, because my product is different. I'm a big believer into try to not reinvent the wheel and not copy what works, but model, of course, what works. And that's why I said I really relate to your process of not trying to force your framework into their style, is more adjusting their style to your framework. What's your rebuttal to that? When your clients come back to you and say, well, Jesse, my story is different, my product is different, what do you say to that?
Well, I would encourage them to let them know that everyone's story is different, everyone's product is different. But one thing that is the same is some universal principles. And so when you're presenting, There's a few key components in that presentation that will help you connect with the audience better. Effective storytelling. And if you can make the story about a certain pain point in your own personal life, that's going to get the audience to relate to you. And if your product or service, whatever it is that you're specifically selling, you got to provide value before you sell the product or service, which means you're going to have to show them that you're the expert in the space, whether you're teaching or showing proof or testimonials before you go to sell your product and service. And so they can have the most unique product and service in the world. I just believe that the framework is universal. It's just the customization of how you implement it. You get the freedom to do it how you please.
No, that makes perfect sense. And you mentioned testimonials and proof and things like that. What about people that come to you and say, well, I'm just starting out now, I do not have testimonials?
Which is okay, and that's a thing. And I would say, hey, has there ever been a human being on planet Earth you've helped since you were 5 years old? Let's get them on the phone, okay? And so let's see if we can get somebody to at least say something nice about how you've helped make their life better in some way. So, people starting out, they don't have really testimonials of like, hey, this person coached me and got me this result. They may not have that, but I would just say, I'm sure there's somebody in your life that'd be willing to vouch for you and say that you've done something to help encourage them in their journey. And maybe we could just start with them and just start there.
Would you ever use like the actual speaker's result? Let's say, I don't know, maybe think about someone that talks about weight loss, right? If they lost a lot of weight, but and they're trying to become a speaker and get their name out there and they really want to go off their stages and build their own stages, would you use their own story into your framework until they get testimonials, or you still want to go off their?
It's going to be a combination. So if you're someone speaking on weight loss and you want to have people hire you for weight loss, it'd be good for them to know that you have followed the steps yourself. So showing before and after pictures of yourself would be great. You are the best proof in that story because you've lived it. And then if you don't have testimonials for someone before and after, then you're just going to highlight what you've done and then how you will help other people achieve this before and after result.
Yeah. Going back a little bit to the storytelling, I feel like everybody's struggling with storytelling, and there's so many different aspects of it. Can you come up with a way to simplify it for people? Like, let's, if possible, maybe if you can extract the storytelling part or the storytelling framework, quote unquote, to help someone that they're trying to learn storytelling or apply storytelling for their own story and their own business and whatnot, in a not simple, I guess, simple, but it's not easy, right? In a simple way for them to understand it. I feel like storytelling nowadays has so many different components, and you hear so many, and of course we have ChatGPT and all the other tools that we can, but at the end of the day, it still comes down to how you articulate it, how you can emphasize it in a way that people understand it.
Yeah, I mean, if they're looking for some storytelling techniques, you want to first have a character, right? That's the very first thing. Identify the character in the story. And so I believe the best storytelling would be a character being the speaker. And so you would focus on you as the character. You want to make that character likable, meaning you're going to describe some good qualities about the character potentially that they may like, so you can get the audience to support that character. It's the same framework they use in movies. Every movie has a favorite character. We watch the movie because there's one character that we're like, I love this guy, I love this girl, she's awesome. So there's a character in that film or on that story that we like. And then after you have a character identified in your story, you jump into a conflict. So if there's no conflict, there is no story. There is no story, there is no conflict. So if you're trying to make a point, tell a story. And if you're trying to tell a story, make a point, and always have conflict, and make sure that conflict is it's relatable to your audience. Make sure it's personal. It's about your struggle. And then you also make sure that it's vulnerable, meaning you're sharing some challenging part of your life. This is where you build know, like, and trust factor here. And then from there, you jump into your content, which is where it's not just you explaining what happened in the story. You're teaching how to get through this process. So in the beginning, you hit the heart, open up the heart of the audience. But in the middle of the presentation, you open up their mind and their head. So now they can look at you as an authority. They can believe you. They may want to hire you. They may want to work with you. Because if you just tell the greatest story on earth, but they don't believe you're an expert, they're not going to work with you. So you have to have your process of content that you can teach them. And then you shift over to this is where you shift over to like the call to action. This is where you just quite literally have a conclusion. And the conclusion could be, buy my book, download my PDF, join my mastermind, meet me in the back room.
Whatever.
So that's a simple story framework.
I like that, and I like the fact you place the character conflict, and then all the little. Now, for people to not get confused, because we told them, you told them, you start with a character and make it likable. How can we do it in a way, avoiding what we just said at the beginning of this podcast? Make sure you do not start with like, hey guys, my name is, and then I do blah, 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 right? How can we, I'm assuming it's the hook over there before you build the character. Do you use the hook as a part of the storytelling, or how do you how do you craft the hook and how you transition the hook to the character itself without doing that mistake?
It will depend. So some people will ask question-based hooks to get people to think. So for example, by a show of hands, how many people in here ever been afraid? That's a question-based hook, right? Because almost everyone's been afraid at least once in their life, so we can relate. But you don't have to ask a question-based. You can do a story-based hook. Something like, I still remember that time where I got that phone call that changed my life forever. And then you start into story. So there's all different kinds of hooks that you can play with. I actually just created a hooks resource that a lot of people reached out to me about. That just been sending it out because I found really a bunch of great hooks to start a presentation. So it's really going to depend on what type of hook that you use in the beginning, but a good hook can also roll right into the story.
And so I really like that the first one, the question hook. By show of hands, how many people here have been afraid of something, right? Like you can even, because it's an open-ended question, like afraid of what? Like, oh damn, everybody's been afraid of something at some point. Like, doesn't matter who you are, what do you do.
Brand up.